recorded. And just to keep in mind, as an electronic session, please, to minimize background noise, keep yourself on mute unless you're actively speaking. And we'll go through the process that way. If there's any questions, let me know as we go. On tonight's agenda, there are three things that we'll be covering. The first is to review minutes. Now, you may have noticed in the packets that were published online that the agenda shows we'll be approving the minutes from November as well as December, and we still don't have the November minutes. So what's on the table for us to review tonight is the December minutes from last month, and want to open it up if anyone's had a chance to review those and recommend any revisions or read those into the public record.
I don't know how big a deal it is, but I'm not on one line or the other, if that matters, or I don't know how that works.
You're not on, say that one more time.
I'm not present or excused. I don't know if that matters.
Yeah, we should probably have your attendance reflected properly. Let's go ahead and make that revision. The other thing that I noticed is on the general session discussion, it references that Nathan asked the commission if they had a chance to review and had any comments, and the corrections addressed during the work session. That's the opening statement for the November minutes, not the December minutes. So what I thought I did last month was kind of say the same thing I just said, was that the minutes weren't ready, and we'll review those in January. So if we can make that adjustment just to that first discussion topic under general session.
Yeah, I see where it just was not taken off.
Any other revisions or observations that people saw? All right, I think that may cover it. Let's call for an action on this if everyone's comfortable with those changes, and make a motion for the same.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the minutes with the corrections as noted.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. We have a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second on the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you have a second.
Thank you. Any further discussion before we vote? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Let's see, it looked unanimous. I saw Justin, Jay, Jim, George, Lance, and Wes. All right, thank you. Now moving into our formal agenda, we have two agenda items today. One is to review the historic overlay district on Commercial Street, the establishment for Morgan Fishing, and some signage that they are looking for on 167 Commercial Street. We do not have a representative from the applicant that is here tonight, and the applicant has not provided complete information based on staff requests leading up to this point. Have we received anything new since the staff notes were written up?
I have not, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So we can discuss this if we want to get a little bit of a jump on the conversation. However, without the applicant and a full picture of what they're trying to do, staff's recommendation is to continue the review for this particular agenda item onto the February commission meeting and move to that point. So that's an option that we can move forward with depending on how everyone feels.
Mr. Chair, I was looking at this, and since we don't have the applicant here, could we kind of go through this and I know that it's the zoning and stuff, but I read through this a couple times and putting myself as the business owner. If you go down under design guidelines on the third line, it says simple letter styles, graphic design, and painted metal signs are appropriate. I wrote a note. What is simple? Simple to you and simple to me is different. And I don't know if we have a spelled out letter design, and then it goes on to the next line. It says materials that are highly refractive or plastic are not permitted. Then it says simple designs again are preferred. What is simple? With font styles that are keeping with scene historical in the area. If you drive down there, there's a whole bunch of different standards and styles down there. My question, I guess, is there a possibility, and I don't know who would do it, if we would establish this and pass it on to the council or something like that. But being from the business side of this, it would be so much simpler for a company if they had like 4 designs of letter styles or 5. The definition of painted metal signs that can be 50 different things. And this is just me. I think we're leaving this so open-ended that it's causing us a lot more discussion and a lot more hours of meeting and stuff, because we're kind of relying on these guys to drive down there and kind of go, unless this has already been talked about and there is a kind of a firm design and plan on this. But I think we could help ourselves out a lot if we could give, like, okay, here's your 4 letter fonts. Yeah, the height of the letter, they've got to be out from the building, whatever it may be. And then when the tenants come to us, they will have pretty close to what we're thinking. And then it'd be a simple thing that we could say, yeah, you're close, but can you just change this? And then we can vote on something like that. And I know, I think Mr. Garside kind of wrote this and he's not here, but what do you think?
Oh, Mr. Garside is here. I'll let him comment on that. But I believe that the guidelines that you're referencing, there are a codified version of those guidelines with more specifics, with color palettes and different things. I don't know if it includes fonts because I didn't look at it prior to jumping into this meeting. However, one thing that I think we can do, if we take a step back and look at why we have these conversations as part of the Planning Commission meeting, that was a change we made about a year ago, where formerly what we would do is we would have a separate subcommittee with a member of the Planning Commission as part of that subcommittee, as well as I forget now, the historical committee from the community being part of this. And there was a separate meeting prior to the Planning Commission where these were reviewed in a little bit more detail. They were few and far between, and it separated the commission from some of these conversations, and the decision was made to integrate those sessions into the actual Planning Commission meeting. Since then, we've had a few of these come through over the last few months, which is a good thing, meaning that we're seeing interest in development on Commercial Street. But to your point, it's also taking up a little bit extra time and discussion for this body that maybe doesn't have as much familiarity with these guidelines. And so a couple things. One, Teresa, earlier in the week, we chatted, and she's going to be preparing a hard copy of some of the code for our purposes and review, just as we've got some new commission members tonight and alternates that can help. It'll help all of us. And Teresa, if we could add to that the guidelines, the design guidelines for the historic overlay district as well. They might have already been included in that, but if we could just make sure they are. So that's a little bit of the history, but I'll let Steve address the comments in the staff notes directly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I was just texting along the side with Teresa. When that code was initially adopted, and as you stated, they are guidelines, but one thing that we also included in those, there were several photographs, both of building styles as well as the signage, the types of font, as you stated, that were there. And so in addition to the language, they actually had, like I say, photographs of the era. So it provided them with some guidelines. I know that the Historic District Review Committee on occasions made some exceptions, but they tried to stick with what was reflected in those photos.
So, and I apologize because I haven't seen it or anything, and I'm not trying to be a thorn. I'm just like, I haven't seen any of that, and like I said, I drove down there, and I'm like, the style in keeping with the scene on historic, in the historical area, and I'm just wondering, are we going to, I don't know if we want people to change existing signs to kind of conform, and I guess I need to do more homework on the zoning and stuff, so that I don't ask questions already been answered, I guess.
No, you're good. The signs that are there that predate the ordinance obviously have the opportunity to remain. If they change and would like them to come into compliance. I know that there are a couple of businesses that came in that their business was I don't know, kind of like their logo, and so we gave a little bit of flexibility for those where their logo was also their sign. But for the most part, as far as material goes, the commission as well as the historic district folks stayed pretty true to the materials, and like I said, gave a little bit of flexibility on some of the font. But again, anything that predates the ordinance gets to remain.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Woods, thank you. You said you need to do more homework, but it sounds like you did some homework by visiting the site, and that's appreciated as we prepare for these sessions. So thank you for that. The other
Mr.
thought
Chair.
that I had, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to add to the conversation that I have been working with the Historic Society on a revision of our current historic overlay, and part of that process is to clarify and also redo kind of the style guide, so there's some more clarity. We can't really use anything like that. I just wanted to let the Planning Commission know that that group is working on a revision that they will propose to the Planning Commission, and they're working with the state. I don't know who the state historic architect. Anyway, there's a group there that they're trying to redo our code and also make it more of an option of menus, and maybe not approach it as restrictive as it is, more of a menu of options to help encourage, kind of highlighting the historic nature of our downtown. So.
As things have advanced so much in lighting, especially in signs, are they going to explore, like you can do a very subtle backlighting on, if you have an individual block letter that isn't like strobe or anything, do you know if they're going to look at doing some different lighting versus just that direct lighting from like that we have there now? Is that going to change at all? Do you know?
Sure. I don't know any of the content, what will change. All I know is I supported a grant for them to just focus on the historic overlay portion. And so I have not been included in any of their work as far as the content. I do know that they've been working on it as a group, and will propose that their changes to the city. So hopefully it, we're probably not going to agree 100% across the board, but that is in the works. I just wanted to make you aware that a revision's in the works. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to know that that is in the works. For the time being, Morgan Fishing will be subject to the current set of guidelines as constituted. That being said, I am curious in this revision process. You mentioned flexibility, and there's a continuum. Mr. Woods referenced this idea of having a limited set of options to really guide and give pretty tight direction to where these vendors or applicants can choose materials and colors and so on. And that's on one end of the continuum. The other end of the continuum is to give very loose guidelines and leaves a lot of discretion for interpretation, I should say. And we're probably looking for maybe a balance of that as these are rewritten, where it's not so restrictive that everything's going to look exactly the same, but that we can have a nice opportunity to find facades that blend in well, but also have the ability to interpret those guidelines as a body. So that's a thought. I don't know how other people feel, but that's what comes to mind for me. That being said, any other discussion on this agenda item? Again, I still don't see a representative from the business. Mr. Ackett, your hand is up.
Yeah, just two observations I had, just random maybe thoughts or discussion. The first one was, generally just about logos. I feel like, the ability of technology and graphics and things like that historically versus the capabilities today of design and digital and things like that. A lot of these companies are probably going to want to put their logo as part of the sign. And, the capabilities to design a logo now today are far much more advanced probably than they were back in the day. And so I feel like there's some kind of collision there between what's capable with logo design currently versus what was historically available. And so I just wonder, if we want to look at somehow allowing for logos, but still keeping with a historic design. I feel like, I feel like there's some point where those two could clash. And then the other thought was, it just were random thought, but the place where those two signs are, there's not actually a building behind there. It's kind of like open space. And so I was just a little interested in, it seems like they're advertising the coffee shop on the coffee shop building. And then maybe that's the coffee shop space next to it kind of thing. But it just seemed like there were a couple signs advertising a couple businesses, but there's really, a lot of open space there. So just a couple thoughts there. That's all.
Thanks for those thoughts. I thought I saw another hand. Was that if you did, come off mute and share. Otherwise, we'll carry on. All right. So again, the city has not received any additional information, and so this time it's insufficient for us to be able to make a determination on whether or not the proposed signs meet the requirements with respect to materials or square footage. That being said, just to recap, the recommendation is that we continue this review into the February meeting. So again, if there's further discussion before taking that action, let's do so now. Otherwise, let's do that, perform that action.
Mr. Chair, make a motion to continue this item until February meeting.
Mr. Prescott, thank you. Is there a second? Is that a second, Mr. Brown? All right. Pretty simple sign language. No pun intended, by the way. All right. Is there any discussion on that motion? Let's vote. Please verbally and visually indicate if you're in favor of the motion. Aye.
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 Looks unanimous, Teresa. Thank you. The second agenda item is related to the Ryanell Business Park. This is a plat amendment that's being requested by the developer, Ryan Nye. The property is located at the southwest corner of 400 North and Industrial Road in the industrial section of the city, consisting of 1.76 acres. And the idea is to divide the plat into two separate parcels and put a 3-unit flexible building onto the smaller parcel. That's the proposal before us today as we make a recommendation to forward this to the City Council. Before jumping into discussion, I do see that we have Mr. Ryan Nye from the development on this meeting with us. Mr. Nye, would you like to share some thoughts about the proposed project?
You bet. Well, I guess it's been almost a year ago now. I had, there were 2 parcels there prior that ran along that north. One of them was part of the original development, that lot 3 that's in the cul-de-sac there. And I had purchased some ground right behind Ridley's. And what I had done is speaking with the council and that we absorbed that ground into one large lot, it made it the 1.7 acres, and made them aware of what my overall goal was to have another building out there where you see lot A2R. I think that's what that's, yeah, the second revision. And so what we did, because I built some storage sheds, I think in the one, we can't see it in this one, but some storage sheds were built back there. And so what we did is I got the direction and that to size the retention pond large enough to accommodate everything. And so that's what we have done is I built the storage sheds. I put the retention pond in to accommodate everything. And now coming in front of you to just break off that ½ acre roughly lot so that it'll be a standalone. So if anytime down the road I decide to sell it or anything like that, we don't, and it can stand on its own utilities, its own property, the lot itself. And yeah, that's the overall goal of it. It's just to make it clean.
Thank you. And that'll be accessed instead of via the cul-de-sac directly off of the Industrial Park Road.
Correct. Yep.
And the nature of what you're wanting to put on it, just for my benefit and maybe for others that aren't as clear, how do you define a industrial flex building? What is that? Is this a rental unit or a storage or what is that?
Well, it's office warehouse. So in the front facing Industrial Drive would be the front of the building. It would have storefront, and the garage doors would be in the back. So front would be office space, back would be accessible for deliveries or anything like that, so that it can be used for, like I say, office type stuff or warehouse manufacturing, anything that fits in that zone but that's the overall look of it. Kind of a down in West Haven in their industrial area, you see a lot of that sort of a look. Steel building, wainscot of rock or brick, block, center CMU block, an awning over the doorway, kind of that look. So it's appealing from the curb, but useful to bring trucks in and take deliveries and that sort of stuff, with the bigger garage doors being hidden to the back.
Okay, thank you. And just to clarify, that's more informational. The question before us today is whether or not to recommend moving forward with the plat amendment itself. And then based on how that goes, all of the building itself will be subject to a regular planning process with the city as they go through the site plan and so forth.
Right.
Thank you for that. With respect to this project, for those members of the commission, what questions do you have for the developer and or for discussion as we consider this request?
Mr. Chair, I want to add, and this may be for your side or the Weston. Say this down the road was sold. I guess all the setback, everything's good to where if someone else bought this and they wanted to come in and they decided, I don't like my neighbor, and they fence this off, their piece for the others. I guess all the setbacks, it appears that there's enough usable space that the building could still be used. You can still get your deliveries. There's no, I guess the 10-foot setback on the one side is sufficient.
All of that will be addressed during the building process to where we can determine what size the building that can actually be put onto that parcel, and the design of the building and all of that will be addressed at that time.
Yes, it would have to stand on its own and meet those setbacks. An option that they would have that sometimes happens in these parks is that the property owners could grant each other what they call cross easements, so that it would be okay for each other to use the property. For example, if they do need to bring in large trucks and they might be a little bit restricted in their area, but otherwise it would have to meet all of our requirements to stand on its own, including any improvements along Industrial Park Road.
Thank you for clarifying that. What other discussion items do we have?
Mr. Chairman, I can make a recommendation if you're to that point.
We're to that point. If there's no further comments from anyone else that wanted to weigh in on this or offer any additional insight, let me just ask one more time, what other considerations anyone on the commission or with city and staff that has insight that we might want to consider as we ponder this? Mr. Ackett, the floor is yours.
Mr. Commissioner, I recommend the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council to approve the plat amendment for Rhinell Business Park.
Thank you, Mr. Ackett. Is there a second on this motion?
There's a second.
All right, Mr. Reese, thank you for that. Any discussion prior to voting on this motion for members of the commission? Seeing no discussion coming forth, let's go ahead and vote. And because we're sharing the screen, I just lost my view to see everybody. Hang on.
Aye.
All right, let's go ahead and vote. All those that are in favor of the motion as outlined by Mr. Ackett, please indicate verbally and visually, if you would. Aye.
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 Let me just scroll through this real quick. I see everyone's hands. It looks, Mr. Woods, I didn't see your vote. That was favorable. Motion carries. This passes to send a favorable recommendation to the City Council, recommending that they approve the plat amendment as outlined for the Rhinell Business Park. Thank you so much for that. And thank you, Ryan, for representing the development here tonight. That does bring us to the end of our agenda. However, I failed to mention up front a formal welcome to our new commission member. Justin Reese was sworn in yesterday as our newest commissioner, and I want to welcome Justin and thank him for his willingness to serve the city in this capacity, as well as we have two new alternates that are also with us tonight, Mr. Dan Dixon and Mr. Mark Francis. Again, thank you both for being here and being willing to learn the process to serve the city and to fill in for the full-time commissioners when they can't make these meetings. So thank you so much for that and welcome.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Well, we had the commission here with the new members. Just a couple of reminders on the 26th during city council meeting. Well, prior to city council meeting, we do have mandatory training that'll be conducted by City Attorney Gary Crane regarding Sexual Harassment, Open and Public Meetings Act, and a couple other things. I'm not sure all of that he'll be there. So you'll be receiving that Zoom, and we do need to have all members participate in that. If for some reason though emergency comes and you can't, we'll have Mr. Garside continue and do that at a later time. Also, due to so many new planning commission members, and it's been a little while, Mr. Garside was going to do some training on planning and our role and do some of these things. Though we'd like to do it in person. Our council room just finally got finished being renovated. And so while we have everybody here, I'm hoping that Steve can give us a date that might be workable for him.
And of course, generally people will set aside this third Tuesday for this planning commission meeting. And so if we wanted to start early on a Tuesday, or if it were an evening like tonight when we have a light agenda, we could either start early or do it right afterwards.
My recommendation would be, since we don't know what the agenda is going to look like for February, let's plan on meeting early. For now, maybe penciling in 6 o'clock and plan on that. If the agenda is light, we could potentially follow up on some things same day after and just plan on making an evening of it. But why don't we plan on the third Tuesday of February, next month's session, just starting at 6 like we would normally if we were meeting in person for a working session, if everyone's comfortable with that.
And Mr. Chair, we could also set aside throughout the year as we go, just any thing that Steve might want to address to us, especially after the legislature. There's always some surprises there. We already started looking at some things, so we'll see how it goes. But that could be a possibility too at the end. If we don't have a full, like a very long meeting, we can just put on our agenda to just have some training at the end. Is that good with you?
It's good with me, if you're asking me. I do have a request, and that is, in consideration of this training, and do whatever you're planning on doing, Mr. Garside. I know you always do a great job with that. But in addition, one thing that I think would be really helpful for this body would be beyond acting as a recommending body to the city council and beyond being enforcing the code as it stands. There's a conversation we had a couple months ago with respect to the development off the Island Road that's stuck with me ever since, and is the idea that the decisions we make now have to reflect the code now. And a lot of times we have conversation as commissioners, and we don't like the outcome because we didn't really like the way the code bottled us into one direction or another. And the idea is, part of the reason we're here as a commission is so that we can make things better, so that in 20 years from now, that next commission that's sitting in the same seats we're sitting in has a better code base to work from. And so the training I'm looking for is, how exactly do we initiate this process of maybe looking at one of these ordinances or something that's come across our desk that we've tried to address before? How do we take that and make a recommendation and discuss that in a way that we can put that before the city council and actually change the ordinance? And that, to me, I think would be really valuable training for this group as well. You were on mute, but I did see you say yes, because I'm great at lip reading. All right. Is there anything else that needs to come before us this evening?
Hey, Nathan,
Yes.
I'm a little confused. So that meeting you're going to have in February, that's going to be in person at the city hall?
I thought the in-person one was the mandatory training. Was that correct? I think Teresa was just talking about the fact that we happen to have a full cohort of commissioners and alternates here tonight to speak to all at once, but I could be wrong.
Which one were you suggesting was in person?
So the mandatory meeting with the commission and city council would be prior to city council on the 26th. That will be a Zoom meeting.
Correct.
We had discussed that it's up to Steve if he wants to do via Zoom for the planning commission members training in person, or we can do it via Zoom. It's up to Mr. Garside and how he wants to present.
Yeah, and I would defer to the city. I mean, it's your facility and it's your meeting. I could do it either way.
Would you be planning on having all of the planning commission to your training, Steve, or just the new members? Is it for everyone?
It would be for everyone that way, just for continuity purposes, and so that they could have some good exchanges and some good examples from prior experiences.
Would we be able to maintain social distancing in the city hall if we had everyone there? Just saying.
I don't know. Teresa talked about a renovation of the facility, and which makes me feel old since I was there when you built it in the first place and it already needs to be renovated.
So I'll chime in if you don't mind. So the council room is being retrofitted with technology that actually allows it to facilitate online meeting better. So we could have a few people in there, but I don't think we're, as a city, ready to have full in-person meetings. And so the room is the same size as it was before. We didn't expand it. It's just retrofitted with, and it'll be done. It's not done yet. It'll be done in the next probably 2 weeks. But at that point, it does facilitate having a conference room style meeting. Right now, if you have 3 people in person and the rest on Zoom, it doesn't work very well. So we could, I think it's just safest to plan all Zoom.
And
Even when
if I
that
had my
room's
2
done.
cents to that, I would recommend the same thing, but until we get the all clear, it looks like we might be best to continue with Zoom.
It doesn't matter to me. I've had it, so according to the experts, I've still got immunity for a couple of months. So
Tony's old enough; he'll have the vaccine by then.
I'm not 70 yet, Dave. Not quite.
So, Mr. Chair, we'll plan on a Zoom meeting early on the third Tuesday in February.
Perfect. So 6 p.m. will be the training component by Mr. Garside. And then at 7, we'll begin our planning commission meeting as normal. I did see your hand, Mr. Rackett. Did you have anything to add?
You know, the only thing I had, since we were kind of in this free-flowing discussion outside of the meeting, the email that Teresa sent over today about the bylaws and the rules and the procedures, I skimmed through that briefly, and I was noticing in section 5, motions. I don't know why they jumped out at me, but I didn't necessarily feel, I guess I wasn't really aware of, you know, all the motions and all the different types of motions. And so that was really interesting. Down at the bottom, the motion to open and to close and to adjourn and things like that. I wasn't sure if that was, you know, obviously this document is here for a reason. And if it's more of a letter of the law or spirit of the law type thing. And I wasn't sure, you know, how important that was that we followed these type of things. I always hate to read stuff if we're not following the rules exactly. But so I just specifically section 5, J and L, motion to open and close and to adjourn. I just wanted to, I guess, bring that up and just bring it to light that if there's something we're supposed to be doing there that maybe we are doing and I'm just spacing out during that time, there's potential for that. But I kind of felt like maybe there was a step we were missing there, and I just a thought.
Yeah, thanks for that thought. And that may be something good to cover in the training itself. My understanding is there's certain actions that require formal motion. There's other actions like adjourning a meeting that can be done via motion, and it's appropriate. And it can also be declared by the chairperson, as I understand it. So that's you've seen me do that as well, and that can be true for open or closing a public hearing. I think as well that I can declare that closed, or we can have a motion to close it. But again, it's a learning process, and if we need to amend how that's been done, let's definitely do that. So Steve can guide us appropriately during the training. All right, anything else?
On that note, I move that we adjourn.
All right, is there a second on that motion?
I don't believe you need a second.
Doesn't need it.
Then let's adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Brown.